hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of the Indigo Womb Wisdom podcast. I'm your host and sister friend, Shatia Owsley, and thank you for watching and or listening. So sit back, grab some tea and a notebook, and let's vibe together as we have organic and practical conversations embracing intuitive womb wisdom, spirituality, and a sprinkle of magic to rebel, restore, and radiate overall wellness in our lives. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Indigo Womb Wisdom podcast. I am your host and your sister friend, Shatia Owsley, and today we are joined by the author of the book, 28 Daily Thoughts and Mantras for Mindfulness, Keys for Stress Relief and Personal Growth. Her entire wellness platform is centered around mindfulness, personal growth, stress relief, and stress management. In essence, how can we live calmer, centered, grounded, and meaningful lives? Today, I would like to introduce our guest, Miss Jacquie Bird.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here to sit and chat with you.
Yes, I'm so happy you're here. Jacquie of Jacquie Bird Spiritual Wellness creates and offers products and services that support, guide, and empower people of all backgrounds to embrace wellness on their own terms with the support of stress management techniques. She is also the creator of Stress Busters guided meditations, where she creates guided meditation videos and audio tracks, as well as meditation music she calls Sound Soul Vibing. To provide extra support to her clients, she creates handmade wellness jewelry under her brand Modal Visions, which is rooted in the dynamic, energetic properties of gemstones, crystals, and copper. And you can also check her out on her podcast, Roll with Peace in Mind.
Hi.
I am so excited for this conversation today. So, before we get into how you started doing all these amazing things, let's take it back a little bit and talk about how this journey started for you.
Well, my background is that of a performing artist. I was a dancer, singer, actress. I did Broadway, TV, film, toured, all that other stuff. And it's a very high pressure, stressful place to be in that industry. And, it's subject to multiple opinions, often totally opposite. You can get from one agent to the next in one day. So, sometimes you don't really realize how much stress you're under because it's part of your life and it's part of whatever that is that you're doing. But I've also had a lot of depression in my life, a lot of periods of depression, to the point that I didn't want to be here. It had gotten that bad. So I was always looking for ways to find some equilibrium for myself. And I was reading a lot of books, a lot of self-help books, a lot of new age books. But the thing about it is, if you don't put the stuff into practice, it's just things that you are taking in, but you're not using them. And at this point, I guess years ago, about 11 years ago, I had gotten into a situation that was extraordinarily stressful and I was falling apart. And it was like, okay, you've done this before, you've fallen apart before, not a good look. So you need to calm down. And it's beautiful how things work. Prior to that, I guess it was maybe 6 years prior, I was in India and I'm walking down the street and I get this download. You need a Tibetan singing bowl. Wasn't thinking about it. At this point, I was in transition between, I had stopped performing, I'd left the industry, and I was trying to figure out, who am I without that? That was my identity. That's how I was known. That's how I expressed in the world. So who was I without that? Who was I without auditioning, without being on stage? I had no idea. So I was in that period of time of trying to figure that out. Um, So again, I'm in India. This is 2008, and I get the bowl, I get the singing bowl, and I start to work with it. And I find I knew enough that it had meditative qualities, it had healing properties, But, actually using it, I start to realize, oh, this is not just stuff. This is an actuality. I get back, the bowl sits on the side. And now here we are, we're in 2014 and things are bad. I'm falling apart. And I'm looking to calm myself because my mind is going. I'm thinking about all the worst things that could possibly happen. And as I'm telling myself, Miss Thing, you need to calm down. You getting on my nerves. You need to calm down. You know? When I started to go, okay, what is that? What is that I can bring myself peace? I picked up that bowl and I started to play it and start to sing to it. And I realized, man, this is great. This is great. Because for moments when I had that bowl, I felt calm. I felt peaceful. I could breathe. I could relax. And I started to use it more on a daily basis. And as that was happening, I think about the same time, I hadn't even thought about this. I think about the same time my stepmom was starting to get sick. And I'm sitting in the emergency room with her one night, and I'm looking at the doctors, and I'm seeing it's like midnight, and I'm seeing doctors like, like trying to stretch themselves. And I remember thinking, who helps them? What's their go-to? And in those thoughts, that's where Stress Busters guided meditation was born. This whole thing, and it was based on everything that I knew, all of my experiences as a dancer, as the unofficial therapist to tons of friends, that all just started to come together, and I realized that, oh gosh, this is your passion. This is your path. This is what you've been searching for a decade of what is Jacquie going to do? What is her voice? How does she need to express? What is authentically her? And that's how that was born.
I just love to hear how you were able to come through multiple journeys.
Yes.
So let's dive into stress a little bit more. How would you define stress?
Well, the way I would define stress is kind of simple. When you feel out of whack, and most of us feel out of whack, and that's our normal. There may be a headache, like a regular headache, or a regular backache, or exhaustion, or you can't sleep, or you're short tempered, you feel like you never have enough time. And because we live this way regularly, as I said, we take it as normal, but it's not. It is stress. And we walk with it so much that we don't think it's stress. And then the other part of that is because everyone is stressed, we think that's okay. Everybody's stressed. So what, it's no thing for me to be stressed because that's the normal human condition. It is not. It is not. That is what we have taken on to be normal. And what's interesting about how much we don't realize it. I had given a workshop a couple of months ago, and what one of the participants said at the end was, I did not realize how tight and stressed I was until I went through the workshop. So, because we're wound all of the time, we don't have anything to compare it to unless you do something like meditation or you dance or you paint or you draw, something that's creative, something that's coming out of you. You don't really realize it until you have a cough that you can't stop. The doctors don't know why until you have a chronic backache that surgery hasn't fixed. That's when people begin to go, oh, and sometimes they start to connect the dots. And a lot of times we don't connect the dots between stress because that's too simple.
What are some of the most misunderstood aspects of stress?
I think
Mhm.
that what's misunderstood is more of what's accepted. It's like, I don't know if people don't understand it, but because, like I said, everybody is stressed, they think that that's normal. And, if you're the breadwinner in your family, you're the one that, everybody comes to for decision making, you've taken that role on and you often don't feel, particularly women, often don't feel you can say no. If I don't do this, she'll get mad at me, or I'll let them down if I don't do this. So that's a lot of the things that we tell ourselves when we are really at the breaking point and we don't realize that we have permission to say no. We need to give ourselves that permission to say no. Or my body is screaming and I need to rest. I need to close my eyes for few minutes. Those are the things that we don't feel are necessary because we don't realize that the pressure cooker that we are in most of our lives, most of our time, is not healthy at all.
Understanding, how do you work with your clients to help them to connect those dots?
Well, we do journaling. Feel that sometimes we're more honest when we put pen to paper and it's just you and that page. I find that a lot of times we're more honest in that space. So I journal. I have people journal. I'll ask questions, and a lot of times their answers are surprising to themselves because they don't realize that there are dots to connect and that there are ways to perhaps do something a little simpler. Mainly, it's just through me asking questions. They will speak to me. I'll ask, what is happening? What's going on with you right now? How are you feeling in your body? A lot of times they'll come to me with specific things where they just think, oh, we're going to do a sound healing and guided meditation, and that's it. And I'll have that release for however long the session lasts. But I work with people basically from the inside out. It because stress is directly connected to your mindset. It's not just your job, your family, it's your mindset. It's what you have accepted to be true. And a lot of times through journaling and the questions that I'll ask based on the information they're giving me, they begin to realize I don't have to do that. I can make it a little bit easier if I skip that step. And if like I was working with a mother who was she had so much stuff going on. She was not working. Her relationship was falling apart. Basically, it had fallen apart. And she had 2 young children. And she was feeling so much pressure from all sides. And she was butting heads with her oldest child, who was angry for, you know, some seemingly obvious reasons. But I would let her know, please understand what his anger is. He's upset. His whole life has fallen apart. He's watching his world crumble. And he doesn't know what else there is. So I would talk to her about her response to his anger. You know, what do you do when he goes through his fit? And she says, I start yelling. And I said, well, when you yell at him, what does that do? And she goes, he just gets madder. So I helped her understand that you can't control another person, not even your kid. You have to control yourself. You have to understand what your knee-jerk reactions are to any given situation. And when you understand that you go on automatic pilot as well, you can stop it in the moment and make a different choice. So I talk to my clients a lot about the choices that they choose to make in a given situation and try to point them to another way. There's another way you can handle that can diffuse the situation with that person that you're having this thing with and with yourself. And I would get her to work with her in ways to be more calm, and it's always
Mhm.
about the breath. It's always to take that breath because when you take that breath, you give yourself the space to choose how you react. If you don't take the breath, you just go on automatic pilot. So, when we're dealing with family in particular, we have this history. We have these roles that we've been playing since we were born with this person. And it's cyclical. And you end up, especially if you're, knocking heads, you end up just repeating the same thing and you don't change it. To change a situation, you have to change your response to it. And to do that, you have to take the breath. Because when you take the breath, again, you go, okay, I'm getting ready to go off. I'm going to just reset myself first. And then I'm going to make an informed decision based on what I know, based on my experience, based on my wisdom. And then that's what speaks, as opposed to you just reacting. Because whenever you react, it always escalates the situation. It never brings it down because now you both are like this. And if one of you steps back and takes that breath and takes that moment, using that term, you connect with yourself, you know you don't want to have the same reactions because it makes the same outcome. So in taking that breath, you have it basically it's kind of like almost stepping out of your body. You have a better overall picture. It's almost like you're outside of your body and you're looking at the scene. You see yourself about to go off and you see this person that you're about to go off on. And
Mhm.
when you take that breath, you can step out of yourself and go, no, that's not, I don't want to go in that direction. Let me try something else. And that, let's take a time out first. You go ahead and be mad. I'm gonna go over here, and then let's come back and see if we can come to some type of peace between us. When you don't take that breath, you don't have that opportunity to make that choice. And a lot of times, your change in how you react changes the situation. And a lot of times, people don't understand that. This person is like this. So if I change how I act, that's not going to change them. No, it's not going to change them, but it will change your situation. It will change how you interplay with that person. Um, I'll give you a case in point. My landlord, not my favorite person in the world by any stretch of the imagination. And we used to butt heads. I mean, where I would be yelling and screaming at him. And it's not to say it wasn't warranted because anyway. But over the years, particularly when I started practicing more with my own peace, I decided to take a different approach with him. And initially, he was still reacting to me the same way. And I said, we're not going to react to that. We're just going to ignore him. And over time, it actually changed our dynamic. It was really fascinating to witness. He's still who he is. He still has his moments. Still moments when I want to go, no, you know, quite often. But that taking that breath gives me the opportunity to make a different choice. Is it really that important that I say this? Is it going to make a difference? Most of the time, the answer is no. So then I say to myself, then what's the point? What is the point? It's interesting because now I'm thinking about my acting training. When you play a scene, two actors are in a scene. When you look at a script or sides, part of the scene, you have to look at what your objective is. You have to look at what your relationship is to this character. And what is my objective as the character? What is it that I want? So when you think about what it is that you want, and most of us have no clue as to what that is, if you want peace, you're screaming at somebody is not going to get that. So when you know what you're about in the sense of what kind of environment do I want? What kind of energy do I want in my airspace? You have to create that for yourself first. And when you do that, then you can have people come to the table. They're still going to be themselves, but they may tack it down a little bit. They may bring the noise down a little bit because you're already in this place. And so when I work with clients, I talk to them about that. It's not how this person reacted, but how did you react? How did you respond? Can you find another way. Maybe there's another way. And that's something they'll journal. Okay, what are the possibilities when this situation arises? I have these choices. And it makes them become a little bit more proactive in their own peace and seeking their own peace because that's not something you're brought up to believe in, peace. That's just something we hope governments can do. But if you can't do that for yourself, you cannot expect a government with a bunch of people that don't have peace to be able to create that. You got to start with yourself, each one, each one of us. And then that changes the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love how you really talked about bringing the ownership back to the person. It really is about us taking responsibility and accountability for ourselves. It takes patience, it takes
Yes,
time.
yes.
And so I love how when you're working with your clients, you bring them back to self. We're not going to
Always.
focus on anybody else. We're going to focus on what we're doing and how we can work on us in order to shine our light out into the world in order for us to start to see change.
I think that for people, sometimes that inward dive is frightening because sometimes you find in that inward dive, or you can, that a lot of stuff that you've taken to be true is not.
Mhm.
And for some people, that that's frightening to them because it's, what is it? The devil you know than the devil you don't. Some people would rather be stick with the misery that they know than to step out on a new frontier. It's frightening to a lot of people. And stepping out into that new frontier is where you actually figure out who you actually are. That a lot of the stuff that you carry, you don't need. Or a lot of the stuff that you carry was given to you by parents that didn't know themselves, that was given to them by parents that didn't know themselves, etc., etc., etc. So when you actually take the responsibility for your own happiness, for your own well-being, you are breaking a cycle. You're breaking, this generational stuff that's coming down that you are inheriting. You break that when you begin to look at yourself, and in yourself, a lot of things you will be able to let go of because they don't pertain to you. Think about age, particularly as I'm getting ready to turn another age in a couple of weeks. But I
Happy early birthday.
think when I think about myself in my 20s, myself in my 30s, myself at 40, and et cetera, et cetera, I realized that my 20s was kind of going, okay, a lot of that stuff my parents told me is not applicable to me. It has nothing to do with me. It was their fears, it was their philosophies, it was their perspective on life. What's yours? Then I get into my 30s and just fall totally apart. And because all of those expectations and things that I had come into the 30s with had to be broken away. So while it was a time of a lot of uh, depression and turmoil, all of that, as I look back on that part of me, that aspect of me, that led to this place right now. So it's people, we're fearful about those type of changes, but it's kind of like a sculptor with a chisel on stone, and you're chiseling away things that you've been carrying that have nothing to do with who you are. When you take that breath and you make a different choice, you begin to tap into who you actually are and how you want to show up in the world, how you want to show up for yourself, how you'll show up for your family, your coworkers, your employees. You will be deciding as opposed to just being willy-nilly a breeze for everything that blows.
Mhm. For sure. I always say most parents do the best they can with what they
They
have and what they know,
certainly do.
right?
Yes.
And, but I also believe at a certain point in time, children have to take responsibility for their own healing and
Yes,
their own growth.
Yes,
right? And we cannot continue to stay in a place where we are continuing to look outward to point the finger about what our parents did or what they
yes,
didn't do, right? Because they only did what they knew. And I think the times are a lot different. There are a lot more resources out there. There's a lot more research to us to help us to, like you say, chisel away a lot of the things that we carry, the armor that we built to protect ourselves from different things that have happened or things that were said. But ultimately, it is our responsibility to get to a point to say, I deserve better. I'm worth more. I am enough. And I release my parents from
right.
the responsibility of trying to get a do-over because there is no do-over. We can't go backwards.
They do the best they can with what they know, and that's part of
Uh,
the forgiveness process of being able to recognize that and to forgive them. Because,
mhm.
again, you're being raised by unconscious people, by unconscious people, by unconscious people, and as you shed light on yourself and you allow your light to come out, then you break the cycle and you can make different choices.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So let's just dive in just a little bit into meditation. How do you help people to understand what meditation is, the different forms of meditation, and what form of meditation works best for them?
Meditation is basically the succession of the thinking mind. So for me, meditation is even broader than just sitting in a spot and breathing. You can start meditating with any activity, and I talk about this in my book. Any activity that you are currently doing, if you are present in that activity and you are not looking for the deadline, the end, the beginning, not looking at the time, not thinking about who you have to pick up at 3 o'clock. If you could actually be focused in that moment with what you're doing, you are meditating. You don't have to, and it's a practice. You just, pick something. You can choose, if you cut up onions. I always think about cooking when I talk about this. But cutting up onions, not my favorite thing to do. But I learned through that if I just think about cutting the onions, I don't think about what I'm going to do after I cut the onion, what I didn't do before I cut the onion. If I just cut the onion and I am aware of the feel of it, if I'm listening to the sound as that knife hits the board, if I am really delved into that activity, that is a meditation. It could be just walking. You can walk and do a meditation. Normally, we're rushing to work. Maybe not have the earphones on. Maybe not be looking at your phone. Maybe not be listening to music. Maybe actually just walking, feeling your feet touch the ground, noticing the sights and the scents in the air, looking if it's, spring, look at the trees, the buds. That's a meditation. So you can begin to meditate by using an activity that you do on a regular basis. Could be folding clothes. Just fold the clothes, feel the fabric, feel what it feels like, smell the scent of the dryer. Even if you do that for a few moments, you've begun to meditate. So it's accessible. But I think what happens is we have this image of you must sit in a pretzel with your fingers like this and go home, and that is a way to meditate, but it is not the only way. You can meditate in your daily life with whatever activities you choose to do and choose to be present in it. And you will find if you practice that enough that when you go to sit and breathe, you may have more success with that. And if you sit to breathe and you are aware of the breath moving into and out of your body, eventually your thoughts begin to kind of spread out a little bit. So you're not being bombarded with all of these thoughts coming at you at one time. And the other thing about that is if they do come at you, because they will, don't judge. Don't say, I can't do it. I suck at it or whatever. Just you hear it and just let it float away. What also makes the idea of meditation confusing for people is that there are so many forms. And what I say about that is look at a few videos, research, do some reading, see what speaks to you. Because there are so many ways to do it and so many forms that can be overwhelming in and of itself. I think the most simple way is to just choose an activity, as I spoke earlier, and see if you can do it for however long, but stay focused in the action of what you're doing. That to me is one of the simplest ways, the most accessible ways to begin meditating.
I love that.
And don't grade yourself because people grade themselves. They think, okay, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes and I'm going to have no thoughts. Ain't going to happen. That's just not realistic. You know, one of the things I also suggest is guided meditation. And that's what I specialize in because this way it's like flying in an airplane. The pilot flies the airplane. You just sit there and you watch the movies or you sleep or whatever you're choosing to do. I find that guided meditation is a good entryway into meditating because you don't have to think about it. You are guided. And that's another option for folks that are, looking for tools and ways to ease them into meditation.
Yes, I definitely agree. That is how I started meditating, which was through guided meditations. Yes. It just made me think about a couple of the apps that I have used
Yeah.
in the past. So Calm is one of the apps
Yes.
that I have
That's a
used
big
in the
one.
past.
Yeah.
I have to say, no one has ever listened to Matthew McConaughey tell a story. He tells bedtime stories on Calm. I never make it to the end of the bedtime story because I'm usually knocked out.
Yeah.
But one of my all-time favorite apps is Insight Timer. It is a free app. I wanted to just jump back a little bit when you were talking about people tend to grade themselves when
Mhm.
they are starting a meditation practice. We are so quick to try to correct ourselves, criticize ourselves, give ourselves a grade, judge ourselves
Mhm.
in a moment when we should be connecting with ourselves.
Right. And I mean, some people don't know what that looks like. I mean,
Mhm.
because most of us are running all the time. And so to actually know what that looks like, we don't know. And a lot of times we are basing these things on a model. We are judging ourselves on a model. We are not really understanding what it looks like for us, what meditation feels like for you. It's, you're looking again at somebody sitting with their fingers like this in a perfect lotus position and they're sitting upright. That is how we identify it. And we identify it as, you can drift out of your body and all this other stuff. And it's really a matter of finding that connection with yourself. What does meditation feel like to me? It can be listening to the rain. You're sitting in your room and you're hearing the sound of the rain. And instead of whatever, you might be on the phone or sitting on the computer, take a moment and just listen to the sound of the rain. And as you listen to the sound of the rain, your voice begins to go deeper. Your breath begins to slow. And when you do that, that can be an image you pull when you're at work. You're stressed at your desk. If you close your eyes for a moment and you just hear in your mind's eye the sound of the rain, wherever you like to sit in your place, that will bring you right back to calm and peace.
I love me a rain sound. I love me a good
Yes,
thunderstorm. Oh, I
yes.
love it. I even have my babies hooked on the rain sound.
Nice. Yeah. So if you're hearing, if you like the sound of the wind, if that's something that makes you feel like home being in here, then, sit and envision the sound of the wind. If that's what you like, you have a lot of tools at your fingertips to help you meditate, but you have to be creative about being and identifying what those things are. It could be the sound of a fly. I don't know. It could be whatever. If that buzzer makes you feel like home, whatever that is, if you start to look for those things, identify those things in your normal um, location, and you can pull tools to help you again when you're in going through your day. You have to have these things that you can use in the moment, that you can pull up, that are calming for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I was gonna ask you, what's one simple under 5-minute practice that people can use, but you just gave us a whole list of them for sure. So I love it. I love it. From breath work to taking a pause to the guided meditations, that they have guided meditations as short as a minute
Mhm.
to as long as several hours
Yes.
and everything in between. And so as we come to a close, I would like to ask you if you could give our listeners any takeaways, because they didn't take anything else away from this conversation. What is the one mindset shift that you believe would help with stress management to help them move along on this journey to live a calmer, more grounded, and present life?
Define what peace is for you. Define, if you don't know what that is, then begin to listen for the answers of what does a peaceful existence feel like to you? What does it look like to you? But more importantly, as I said, what does it feel like to you? And then begin to look for more of that, creating more of that in your life. Peace is not something that's outside of you, it's something that's within you. And if you can get yourself to a place of choosing the more peaceful route in any decision you make, you will find more peace in your life if you start to claim it.
Beautiful, for sure. How do people connect with you?
Thank you so much. The best way to find me, because all of my tools are there, is my website, JacquieBirdSpiritualWellness.com. I spell Jackie, Jacquie, Bird, Bird. That's the resource. That's everything. I have a free meditation kit if you join my mailing list. My music is there. I have guided meditation tracks. I create guided meditation audio. You can book me for a session. My book is there. You can bring me in for events or whatever, but that's the hub, my website. My socials, Instagram, Jacquie Bird Spiritual Wellness, YouTube, Jacquie Bird Spiritual Wellness, Facebook, Jacquie Bird Spiritual Wellness, TikTok, Your Wellness Guide.
Okay. Yes, yes. We have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. Before we end this session together, I always ask our guests one question before we sign off for the day. And
Okay.
that question is, with all of your lived experience, everything that you've been through, everything that you've seen, what would you tell the little Jacquie?
The timing of that is amazing because I just wrote a blog post. What would I say, tell my younger self? So, I would tell her, well done, baby. Well done. You were fierce
Yes.
because you went through some crap. You fierce. And thank you.
My goodness. Yes. I mean, such a positive way to end our time together. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing all of your gems. Your spirit, your energy is just, it's so infectious and it's so beautiful. So we honor and appreciate you. We want to see what you do in 2026. And thank you everyone for watching today. And we will see you in the next episode. Peace.